You are listening to A Light to the Nations. This podcast is a production of the Ephesus School Network.
Hello and welcome to another bonus episode of A Light to the Nations. I'm your host, Father Fred Shaheen. A grammatical detail found at the end of the story of Zacchaeus in Luke chapter 19 raises an important question. Once we resolve it, we are able to understand the story correctly. In chapter 19, verse 9, it says, "And Jesus said to him," and then what follows is expressed in the third person. "Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham." If Jesus is addressing him, that is Zacchaeus, why does he say he also is a son of Abraham? The issue here is in the preposition in verse 9, pros, and the nuances of its usage. Simply put, the phrase "Jesus said to him" in English sounds like he's addressing Zacchaeus, but in Greek, pros also expresses the idea of toward or in the direction of. Thus, a literal translation of the Greek into English would sound like Jesus said concerning him or about him. With that understanding in mind, let's revisit the text of the story concerning Zacchaeus. "He entered Jericho and was passing through, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, 'Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today.' So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all grumbled, 'He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner.' And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, 'Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold.' And Jesus said to him, 'Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost.'" That's Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. So once we settle that grammatical issue of pros, it becomes clear that the real conflict in the story is between the ones who murmur that Jesus is going to be the guest of one who is a sinner, and Jesus' declaration that he is also a son of Abraham. That Zacchaeus received Jesus' invitation with joy and immediately made haste and came down from the tree should not surprise anyone who has been paying attention to Luke. We had heard earlier that Jesus' mission was not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. That's chapter 6, verse 32. Zacchaeus, as a tax collector, would surely fit that bill. That's why it's critical that we understand Jesus' words in verse 9 and 10 as being addressed to the ones who are murmuring. The fact that he says that Zacchaeus is also a son of Abraham indicates he is addressing Jews, that is, ones who might consider themselves Abraham's children based on genealogy. And he is presenting Zacchaeus as an example of one who, through his behavior, proves to be a true son of Abraham. And this corresponds precisely to what John the Baptist had preached earlier in the Gospel of Luke to the Jews. "Bear fruits in keeping with repentance, and do not begin to say to yourselves, 'We have Abraham as our father.' For I tell you, God is able from these stones to raise up children to Abraham." That's chapter 3, verse 8. In the story, after Zacchaeus makes haste and comes down from the tree, it says that he received him, that is Jesus, with joy. Notice that Jesus told him that he was coming to his house that day. Although they meet at Zacchaeus' house, Jesus is the host. That is, he is the master of the table, and he feeds Zacchaeus with the bread of his instruction, and to which, Luke tells us, Zacchaeus responds correctly. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. That's verse 8. We have to be careful not to understand this as Zacchaeus somehow making up for his sinful behavior as a tax collector. According to the gospel of grace, there is nothing anyone can do to be accounted a child of Abraham. Rather, we should hear it as Zacchaeus' response to the gospel, which once again we have already heard preached by the Baptist in verse 8 of Luke 3. Bear fruits in keeping with repentance. In other words, do something to show that your behavior is different, that you have indeed heard the gospel and accepted it and repented. Ultimately, according to Luke, being accounted a child of Abraham, that is, being a recipient of the promise to Abraham and to his seed, is a matter not of genealogy, but of behavior. And precisely the kind of behavior that Zacchaeus demonstrates in this parable after having heard the gospel preached. And if God is able to raise up children of Abraham from mere stones, he can certainly raise up a sinner and a tax collector of small stature. Notice also that the verb used in verse 8, in which Zacchaeus shows his fruits of repentance, is stathis, from istimi, meaning to make stand. This same verbal root is used elsewhere in the Gospels to describe Jesus' standing after being raised from the dead. See Luke chapter 24, verse 36, and John chapter 20, verses 19 and 26, and John 21, verse 4. This brings us to the conclusion of this bonus episode of A Light to the Nations. I thank you for listening today, and I look forward to meeting you again soon.